The studio lights gleamed like stars trapped in glass as the crowd buzzed with excitement. ABC's The View had promised a lively episode that morning, but even the producers didn't know how lively it would get. The air hummed with that strange mix of caffeine, applause, and unpredictability that only live television can create. The guest was one of Hollywood's most respected actors, Benedict Cumberbatch, the man whose name alone evoked class, intellect, and that sharp-edged British wit that could slice through tension like a blade. From the moment he stepped onto the stage, his presence commanded the room. He walked out with a modest wave and that signature half-smile, suit tailored to perfection, charm disarming yet distant. The audience cheered wildly, some holding up signs referencing Dr. Strange, others simply clapping for the man who had played everyone from Sherlock Holmes to a tortured genius painter. He shook hands with Whoopi, nodded politely to Sonny and Sarah, then met Joy Behar's mischievous grin with a small, cautious smile. "Welcome to The View, Benedict," Whoopi began, her tone warm. "We've been looking forward to having you on." "The pleasure's mine," he replied smoothly, his voice carrying that quiet confidence that always made interviews feel more like conversations in an old Oxford library than segments of morning TV. For the first 10 minutes, it was everything you'd expect. Charming, intelligent, safe. They discussed his latest film, The Resonance of Silence, a post-war drama about conscience, identity, and redemption. Benedict spoke thoughtfully, weaving complex ideas into graceful sentences. The audience listened intently, some nodding as if he were giving a TED Talk instead of promoting a movie. And then, inevitably, came Joy Behar's turn. Joy leaned forward, elbows on the table, that glint in her eye that had made her both beloved and feared among guests. "Benedict," she began with that half-smile that usually preceded something provocative, "you talk a lot about morality and social responsibility in your films and interviews, but I gotta ask, how do you reconcile that with being part of an industry that's, well, not exactly known for humility?" The audience tittered. Benedict gave a polite smile. "That's a fair question," he said after a pause. "I think the contradiction is part of what draws me to it. Portraying human complexity, not pretending we're above it." Joy wasn't satisfied. "Sure," she said, gesturing slightly with her hand. "But you've also said Hollywood needs to be less ideological and more human." I read that quote, and I thought, isn't that easy to say when you're one of the most privileged men in the business? The words landed like a hammer wrapped in velvet. A faint murmur moved through the audience. Sarah's eyes darted toward Whoopi, who raised an eyebrow as if to say, "Here we go." Benedict tilted his head slightly, a measured expression crossing his face. "Privilege, Ms. Behar, doesn't disqualify one from seeking empathy or truth. It may, in fact, make it more important to do so." Joy smiled tightly. "Well, that's a nice line. But don't you think it's a bit convenient to speak about empathy from the comfort of, say, your London mansion?" That earned a few gasps and nervous laughter. Benedict's lips parted slightly, the faintest flash of disbelief crossing his usually composed face. He chuckled once softly. "You're referring to my home, I assume," he said. "But I fail to see how square footage correlates to sincerity." Joy crossed her arms, leaning back. "I just think sometimes people like you, famous, rich, influential, lecture the rest of us on humility, and it comes across a little hollow." Whoopi tried to steer things back. All right, let's keep it about the film," she said, but Benedict wasn't done. He leaned forward, eyes sharp but calm. "Joy," he said evenly, "if we start dismissing ideas based on who says them rather than what they mean, we stop listening altogether. Privilege doesn't invalidate perspective. It challenges it to grow." The crowd clapped, a few louder than others. Joy smiled again, but this time it didn't reach her eyes. "So you're saying the rest of us should just listen to the privileged class because they're growing?" "I'm saying," Benedict replied, voice firm now, "that listening to anyone with curiosity instead of hostility is how progress happens. You can disagree with me, that's fine, but you don't have to sneer while doing it." The audience reacted audibly. A mix of applause, laughter, and surprised gasps. Joy blinked. Whoopi leaned back in her chair, mumbling, "Lord, it's too early for this." Sonny, ever the diplomat, tried to interject. "Let's not forget, Joy loves to challenge our guests. It's her way of—" But Joy cut in, raising her voice slightly. "Oh, I'm not sneering, darling. I'm just pointing out that sometimes actors mistake having a platform for having all the answers." The clip hit the internet before the credits of The View even finished rolling. By the time Benedict Cumberbatch had stepped into his waiting SUV outside the ABC studios, Twitter was already ablaze. Someone had uploaded a shaky phone recording of the confrontation between him and Joy Behar, complete with subtitles and dramatic music overlay. Within hours, it had gone viral. Millions of views, hundreds of thousands of comments, and a flood of divided opinions. Finally, someone stood up to Joy Behar. Read one trending comment. Cumberbatch destroyed her without even raising his voice. But the other side was no quieter. "Oh, please," wrote another user, "rich white actor lectures women about civility. Yawn." In the age of outrage and instant reaction, The View's fiery segment had become the day's digital battlefield. Meanwhile, Benedict sat in silence in the back of his car, the city moving past in blurs of gray and gold. His assistant, seated beside him, was scrolling through her phone with a furrowed brow. "It's everywhere," she said finally. "Everywhere." He exhaled slowly, looking out the window. "Of course it is. Anything that resembles conflict is currency now." "You didn't do anything wrong," she assured him. "You were composed, smart. You just didn't play the game." "That's precisely the problem," Benedict murmured. "The game shouldn't exist in the first place." He leaned back against the seat, closing his eyes for a moment. He hadn't meant for it to go that way. He'd been on The View a few times before. It was usually light, breezy, half banter, half promotion. But this time, something had shifted. Joy had been sharper, the tone different, almost combative from the start. And though he'd held his ground, part of him wondered if he should have just smiled through it, played the diplomat, and avoided feeding the machine. Across town, Joy Behar was still fuming. She was in her dressing room, surrounded by a few producers and her makeup artist, pacing back and forth like a general after a lost battle. "I don't know why everyone's acting like I'm the villain," she snapped. "He got defensive." "All I did was ask him about privilege." One of the producers, a younger woman who looked like she wanted to be anywhere else, replied gently. "Joy, to be fair, it did come off a bit personal." Joy turned on her sharply. "Oh, give me a break. You can't talk about social issues without making it personal." He just didn't like being challenged. Whoopi appeared at the door, leaning against the frame with that signature look, equal parts amusement and disbelief. "Girl," she said, "you poked Sherlock Holmes. What did you expect? He's going to analyze every word you throw at him until he finds the flaw." Joy sighed, rubbing her temples. "I wasn't trying to pick a fight," Whoopi smirked. "No, but you did. And you lost. Gracefully. But still." Joy laughed, despite herself. "Oh, shut up." The producers were already discussing follow-ups, statements, PR angles, how to manage the flood of attention. One of them suggested inviting Benedict back to clear the air. Joy waved that off immediately. "Please." "The man walked out on The View. He's not coming back, and honestly, I don't blame him." Still, there was something in her expression. Not anger anymore, but curiosity. Beneath the defensiveness, she was thinking about what he said, about listening, humility, and civility. Words she often preached but rarely paused to consider. Benedict, meanwhile, returned to his hotel room, a quiet, minimalist suite overlooking Central Park. The city below glowed like molten glass, unaware that one of its most famous guests was pacing circles inside, wrestling with frustration. His phone buzzed nonstop, calls from agents, messages from friends, even a text from Martin Freeman that read, "Saw the clip. You were magnificent, also terrifying. Remind me never to debate you." Benedict chuckled dryly at that, then sat down at the edge of the bed, He turned on the TV. CNN was playing the clip. Then Entertainment Tonight. Then Good Morning America. Everywhere he looked, his face filled the screen, lips tight, eyes cold, saying, "And sometimes hosts mistake having an audience for having insight." He winced at the sound of his own words. Out of context, they sounded cruel, smug even. He hadn't meant them that way. He'd meant them as a challenge, a plea for better discourse. But in the cutthroat rhythm of television, nuance didn't sell. By midnight, hashtags like the Benedict Breakdown and Behar Clash were trending globally. His publicist called. "Listen," she began carefully. "This is going to blow over. Just stay off social media, no statements yet. Let the outrage machine eat itself." "Do you think I was wrong?" he asked quietly. There was a pause. "I think you were human, and that's rare."